Just so that you're all aware, we will share the entire slide deck with you at the end of the session. But I'm going to be jumping in and out of a variety of different resources. Ted is going to be filling chat boxes with links. So it's going to be pretty busy this morning. But that doesn't mean that we don't want you to put questions in the chat box if you have them. We just might not answer them right away. Ted will keep a record of them. If we need to get something right away and answer it, we will. But we will have time to go back and make sure that everybody has whatever questions there are answered. There's a ton to go through here, and I want to make sure that when you leave today, you do feel that you at least know where to go when you want to sit down and plan your first unit. So that's going to be the big piece that we want to have. All of the sessions, just so that you're aware, every session that has been recorded from the Summer Institute, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday today, will all be posted to the ARPDC site. So if you had heard about or you're going to hear about something today and you say, I didn't go to that session, should have gone to that session, it'll all be posted. So you will have access to it, and we will try to have a very quick turnaround to that. But just to facilitate it, most of your speakers have been sharing their slide decks with you right at the end, just so that you can go back and do that. But if you ever have any questions about any of your 3 days, don't hesitate to reach out to any of the consortia, people that were in those sessions or any of us, and we will connect you or get you what you need in that interim. So we are kind of trying to get these up and turned around as quickly as possible, and so that you have access to them. We know that some of you are already back at school. We know that some of you are back at school later, as in Thursday this week. Some of you are Monday, and then some of you the following week. So it's a very staggered year. So we understand the need to want to get your materials out and ready to go. So my role today is this deeper dive is how do I start planning and what do I have available to me? And the one thing I do want to share with you is that you are in the enviable position of your colleagues of actually having material prepared already for you. That was not the case for the K-3s at all. We were teaching and creating as we taught and as we would unpack it with them. So yes, they had draft materials. Yes, they had pilot materials, but you're a little bit further ahead than they were for sure. So you will have some more materials available to you. So I don't want you to feel like you're going to go in this blind. However, you are going to feel that maybe it is very different than what I've seen before. And I don't know where to start. So again, we're here for that. And that's what this today is about. Ted is going to be in the background, but Ted is my partner and has been my partner all the way through from working from the draft curriculum to the pilot curriculum to the implementation. So we've done this 3 times already, and we change it every time we do it. So even some of the work that I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to say Ted and I will be changing that and updating it, hopefully. So you will get lots of information as it comes available. Okay, so let me begin with our land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we want to acknowledge that this gathering is taking place on traditional lands situated on Treaty 6 is where I'm coming to you from today, home to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Dene, Métis, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge that this land is a traditional meeting ground, giving voice to its original peoples and the story of creation of this country since time immemorial. And for any of the resources that you watch that we have created, you will know that on the land acknowledgement, depending on what the topic is that we're about to unfold or the organizing idea that we're going to be talking about, we embed a link or a video or informational links for you that tie to that, some of which are just for you, the teacher, some of which are you that you can share with the students as well. So it's just trying to make a bit of a connection, not just an acknowledgement, but also as how does this living systems fit to Indigenous culture? So we won't go through it today because we don't have time, but you do have 2 of them here. One that is very appropriate for the students is the Honorable Harvest by Robin Kimmerer. And she does a beautiful job of linking Mother Earth and our responsibilities, which is ecosystems, to the land. So it's a great one to watch. Short, beautiful.
Chris, you'll need to share your screen.
Oh, I was sharing my screen. I'm so sorry, you guys. I
That's all
must have
right.
got out here.
I thought you were waiting, keeping us in suspense.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not keeping you guys in suspense. Sorry. All right. Can you see my screen now? Ted, are you good to go? Okay. My apologies. You should have just chimed in. Don't hesitate. We had a problem every day this week. We've had an issue with tech from somebody, either I was moderating or my own. So please don't hesitate to just dive in and say, can't see, can't hear. So the land acknowledgement that you're looking at right now is got the two slides on it. The top one is really appropriate for the students. The bottom one is quite a bit longer, but it is one, if you are looking for a little bit of connection to what is science and how does it connect to Indigenous culture, this is a great one that the elder talks about. So it's about an hour long. So you would want to watch that yourself first and see if there's pieces that you would like to keep out of that and share with students if that's what it comes down to. Okay, so these are going to try and start on me. I'm just going to whip through them. Going to skip through this one as well. So when we look at today, we're going to really look at some of the pieces that have a combination of things that you might have seen already. If you've been working alongside the presenters on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, some of the slides that you see today will be a review. I'm not going to go through them, but I just want to highlight because we do have a number of you that have just joined today. So I want you to know maybe where you need to do a little bit of backpedaling to and going into. So we're going to look a little bit at terminology just very quickly. Ted did a beautiful job on the first day of unpacking some of the key things that you really need to understand surrounding the new science curriculum. We're going to just talk about phases of learning as the language. I'm not going to go through it in depth like you did on Monday. I'm going to bring forward the numbered outcomes document. For those of you who have been working alongside of us, you already know what that is. Some of you are going to say, I have no idea what that is. So we will bring that and we'll put that in the chat. Some of the things that we put in the chat, just have them up on your background, just so that you can quickly go back and forth if you want to use them. We're going to look at how the concepts in these organizing ideas for science, what are they? And how do they kind of fit together? And they do very much fit together. So there's going to be some questions that you might have as the day goes on as to, well, I'm pretty used to getting a package that says A, B, C, D, and I just followed it in that order. And the answer is you're not going to get that today, and you're not going to get it from your curriculum document. So you're going to have to start thinking about how do I best see some of these things fitting together? And we do have some suggestions for you, and that's all they are. So we'll try and unpack that as we go. We're going to take a closer look at one organizing idea. So I want you to live through living systems with me today so that you get a sense of when you go to look for resources for yourself in your grade, then you will know how it is laid out. So we'll use one grade. We'll use grade 4 today. We'll step through living systems in grade 4, show you what's available, because if I'm a grade 5 teacher and a grade 6 teacher, what I'm seeing for 4 is available to me in my grade as well. So hopefully that's a way that we can kind of do all 3 grades at the same time. So a lot of time on sort of those resources. So it's really a day for just kind of listening, learning, collaborating. If you've found things, don't hesitate to throw them in the chat. Say, I found something that was really good. Share it, because that is the best way that we all learn together. And there hasn't been a session that I have done yet in any subject where I haven't learned from the colleagues that I'm working with. So that's the whole point of this is really for us to work together. So if you are new to this, things that happened on Monday in the session when we just did the overview is that you kind of looked at, here's what science looks at right now. This is what you are used to seeing. You're used to seeing sort of very discrete units. And I call them science in a box. I've been calling them that since the draft came out. I called it that as a principle, because if I had a student who really needed more work in numeracy and literacy, I could pull them out of science. I could put them back into science next year and they could have been honor students, because quite frankly, you taught a unit, it was a box, you taught it, you packed it away, and you pulled out the next kit, and away you went. They weren't really well connected. And it wasn't until we got to the older grades that we started to see how those connections fit, and it started to become more meaningful. But that's not the case anymore. You're not teaching these 6 or 5 units in your grade that's unique to your grade. You're now teaching these organizing ideas. So you no longer have topics, you have organizing ideas. And those organizing idea titles live all the way through. They live from kindergarten in most cases. Some don't start at kindergarten, they start in grade 1, but they live from kindergarten through to grade 6. And so we're using the same language, we're using the same organizing idea, and therefore we're also going to be scaffolding the learning. So just like you teach me in math or in language arts, you teach me something this year that builds on the concepts that I need to get into in the following year, well, that's exactly how science works now. So if in the back of your mind you're saying, yeah, but I'm a 4 to 6 teacher, I'm just starting, and I didn't have the background for K to 3, and my kids, they've only done grade 3. You're right. That's exactly the same scenario that your K to 3 colleagues were in. So are there places where we need to be cognizant of the big rocks, the concepts that lived in the younger grades? Yes. Do I have to go back and reteach every grade? No. You are getting grade 3s who've gone through the new grade 3 curriculum. But yes, they're still going to be missing a few things. And as we sort of tackled the resources and went through this and have been working with teachers, we also built into your slide deck some of the big rocks that you need to use them. You're welcome to just read them for yourself. It's up to you to decide what do your students still need a little bit of extra help in before you dive into your outcome the way it is. As a grade 6 teacher and a grade 5 teacher, they don't have the grade 4 background because they didn't do it unless your school was already doing 4, 5, 6. And we had about half the province that was working on us on the new 4, 5, 6 last year already. So there are quite a few where the students did the new 4. They're moving into grade 5 this year with that 4 in hand. If you're a school that hasn't done that, then we have to be cognizant that they're coming from 3 to 4 with new knowledge, but they're not going from 4 to 5 and 5 to 6 with new knowledge. So we need to be aware of what were some of the rocks that they might have missed. Where do I need to do a little bridging? And what might that look like? So some of the documents that are available that will help us out, one of them is called the Science Curriculum Summaries. And this summary, I'm just going to bring it up. This slide deck, everything that we share with you will be hyperlinked, so you will have access to all of these. But what this does is it simply shows you as a quick glance, because right now you're coming in brand new and you're saying, well, I don't know what they did in K to 3. How would I know that? So here's a way for us to get a bit of a sense of what that looks like. So you have your organizing idea on the left-hand side, your grades across the top. And remember that the organizing idea, that broad statement, often will just span all of the grades, right from K to 6, or grade 1 to 6, or 4 to 6, because some of them don't start until grade 4. Below that, I get sort of the individual pieces that sit with each of the grades. And so that's what I really want this for. I want to know exactly kind of how does this look. So we're going to be looking at living systems today. I'm just going to hone in on that one. I'm not going to read through them all. I'll leave that to you. But in living systems, that's what it is, living. We're talking about things that are alive and things that are not. So they start off in younger grades learning living and non-living, and then they work their way up from there. And what are the aspects and basic needs and those types of things. So by the time we get to grade 4, we're starting to look at living things and their structures, their functions of the structures they have. If I'm a beetle and I've got a hard wing, why do I have a hard wing? What's its purpose? So I have this structure, what's its function? Then when I get into grade 5, I'm looking at things like the body systems. And remember, they're grade 5 students. We'll talk about that again. They're not Bio 30 students. So we don't want to go crazy in these body systems. And then by the time we get into grade 6, we're talking about ecosystems. What makes an ecosystem? What ties the components of an ecosystem together? And so we get quite in depth, and there's lots of possible ways that I can approach this. So as I'm talking this morning, I hope you start getting the sense that, so there's not just one way to do this, and the answer is no, there isn't. It will depend on your interests, your own personal interests, your own personal background, also will drive the way you start some of these organizing ideas. Where you live, if you're coming from the mountains versus somebody who's in the plains, you're going to maybe come at those ecosystems very differently where you start. Where you finish will be the same. Your end goals, your outcome is the same, but where you start could be very different. And to be honest with you, the teachers have embraced that opportunity. They have loved the fact that they could actually, whoops, let me just get this back here, that they actually have choice. We're not locked and stepped into just one order. So you have a lot of flexibility in this new curriculum as you start your planning of your first unit. So you've also, on Monday, unpacked the new language that goes with that. So I won't go through all of that language today. That would again be a Monday one, Ted's slide deck that he shared with you. But it also, this symbol that you see here, this spiral, is really intentionally chosen because these organizing ideas that you're going to unpack with students have the potential of spiraling back and connecting them over and over and over again. So wherever we can do that, why wouldn't we? We would do that in any subject. It's not just science. But now this science curriculum really does have that ability. It isn't discrete little boxes. You've got these organizing ideas and you're coming back and being able to say, remember, we did this, let's take that and let's tie it into what we're going to talk about now. So they're going to grab things from other ones that they've done, and they're going to start to sort of meld them together. We heard from a number of teachers that were working with us for the last 3 years already. And there have been some diehards, and you're here again today, which you just amaze me, who started with the draft, went to the pilot, went to the first year of implementation. And some of them have come back and said, you know, I'm not even going to do an organizing idea unit called living systems. I'm going to call it systems. They're going to put systems at the heart, and they're going to pull from all the organizing ideas. What do we teach them about systems in all of those, and how do those fit together? That's a great way of doing it. You've got that flexibility. So however you see this working best for you, that's really where you want to go. So your title organizing idea has replaced your topic. Topics no longer exist. We're all going to use the same titles or organizing ideas, and they're going to have broad statements that go across them. In the cusps, those columns below our learner outcome, we have the knowledge, the understanding, the skills, and procedures. And that knowledge piece is going to be often a definition. It might be riddled with a ton of definitions or includes or such as things that we have to cover in however I'm going to unpack my unit. So I don't have to do it in the order that it's given to me there, but I do have to make sure that I'm covering all that in some way. So those knowledge pieces are really, really important. The middle column, called your understanding, is, remember, the most important column of the three. It is the one that's tying the knowledge and skills and procedures together in a general statement. It's taking those concepts and putting them in a logical order and saying, here's the broad statement of all of that knowledge and skill that I wanted the kids to learn. And if I'm saying, yes, Ted has met that understanding, I'm saying I covered the knowledge, skills, and procedures. I've given them many opportunities to connect the ideas in different scenarios. And yes, they're getting there. And several understandings sort of stacked together meet the outcome. It's the learner outcome that I'm going to report on. So those are the pieces that we want to make sure that we're really cognizant of. The skills and procedures aren't anything new. We've always had skills, but those skills and procedures also have to be assessed. So that means that if I say to a student, I want you to represent something, whether you represent in math or whether you represent in science or whether you represent in language arts, the verb, the skill of representation has to be taught to me as a student first. I need to know what it is before you ask me to do it. So as you watch any of the videos that we've done, if you went to the session on Monday with Ted, he probably talked to you about you've got to teach me what representation is, or what relate is, or what investigate is. Don't just assume because I'm in grade 6 that I know what that is. Don't even assume that they even know what a discussion is. How many times have we said, just talk with your shoulder partner about this? But have we actually ever taught them what a discussion is and what the expectation of a discussion is outside of the topic that you're teaching me? If I know what an expectation is of any discussion, then when you say, turn to your shoulder partner, I have a pretty good idea of what your expectation of me is at the end of this. So there's all those types of pieces, and they don't just live in science, right? We wouldn't want a student to say, I did an investigation, but we only do investigations in science. No, we do them everywhere. So kids need to hear that language cross all of their courses as well. So, and beginning with the end in mind is the way we were all taught when we went to university. What is the goal? What is it you want to hear from the students to say, yes, they got it. Yes, I can say they have mastered this outcome. What does it sound like? What does it look like? So how am I going to assess them in grade 4 living systems? What is your final assessment going to be? And that should help inform how I'm going to start to unpack my, my unit. So beginning with that end in mind is still really, really important. So just to touch on the language that you saw on Monday, and again, I won't go through these in depth, but they're really important because this is not just about science. We're doing this in math as well, same language you're hearing from us there. Surface teaching is you've got a new definition in that knowledge column. I have to learn it. That's surface level. I don't care whether I teach grade 12 or whether I teach kindergarten. All of us as teachers will be surface level teachers at some point, pretty much every day. Anytime you want to impart something that's brand new, I got to start at the beginning. I've got to start at the basic levels, the surface level. But once I've done a little bit of work with that terminology or that understanding or what you want me to do, I don't want to live there. Those are the easy ones. Surface level are the easy ones to make multiple choice for. They're easy to make true and false for. They're easy to make fill in the blanks for. But that doesn't mean I understand anything. It means I've memorized something for you and I can regurgitate it back. Now it's my job as the teacher to put you in scenarios where you're forced to take the language you just learned and really connect them together and say, oh, okay, that's what they were looking for. And that takes practice. That doesn't just happen overnight. But that's where the deep comes in. I take that surface level teaching and I start to ask them to apply it. I can't apply if I don't even know what the foundations were. So once I've got the foundational pieces, I set you up for all different kinds of opportunities to take that learning and put it together. And then in the end, I've given you lots of opportunities, and wow, Courtney just keeps acing this. Like she just keeps doing a fantastic job of it. I'm convinced that she's ready to get a mark. So why don't I give you yet another brand new opportunity to show me what you've learned? And I'm going to use that as my transfer learning or my mark. The learner outcome is what I'm referring to, or what I'm going to be recording. So sort of a 80% of our time is in that deep world, with lots of formatives and touch bases. And then I've got that time where I've got to mark something and be accountable to report it on a report card. So you have a document called the numbered outcomes document, and Ted will put that link into the chat box. What I'm going to ask you to do is maybe just bring it up on your computer if you don't already have it. So I just want to give you a minute to bring it up. It's a big document. It's one that I would photocopy and have on my desk as my go-to all the time, especially if it's the first time you're teaching the science. All right, so the learner or the numbered outcomes document is your learner outcomes that you need to teach the students. It's our program of studies that we need to be working from, our curriculum document. And the only difference between if you go to New Learn Alberta and hit download the same document, it's the same thing, exactly same colors, same everything. The only difference is that we numbered the outcomes. And we did that for a lot of reasons. But in the draft year, it kind of drove me crazy. And I'll be honest, it was me really that drove me nuts to start with. When we would work with groups, we would have to say, count down 6 pages, find this number of lines down, and make sure that we're all in the same place. And it was just really time consuming. So all of you are not teaching in big schools where you can walk across the hall and meet with 6 or 7 grade partners. Some of you are teaching in schools where you are the science department, or you are the person who teaches the 5-6. So you don't have a partner, your partner's in another location. So this also facilitates that if you get on a Zoom with each other and you want to do some planning together, that you can just give the number, and that makes the planning, everybody's on the same page, you know where to look. So how do I know where it is? If you're a grade 4 teacher, go to page 32, grade 5, 6, start on page 53. They're numbered in the bottom right-hand corner. And you'll also notice that when you're going through those pages, that there are revised dates on them. So every now and then there's a change made or something comes up in these documents. So you just check that every periodically now and then, and just make sure that the date you have on your document is the same date as the one that's being posted to New Learn Out or to the ARPDC site. Because if we update them, that's what we'll do, is we'll just date it that it was updated, and you'll just know. We don't send emails out to everybody just because it would be impossible to keep track of where we're at. So how do I read the numbers? I just want to spend a minute so that you know what you're looking for. So your learner outcome is unique for each grade. The organizing idea is that broad statement, the dark green color at the top, it goes all across, same statement. So the analogy I've been using for everybody is, think of it as an umbrella being opened up. The organizing idea is your umbrella. I open it up, I hold it up by all the rungs that are holding up my umbrella. And the rungs are each individual grade. So every rung is a different grade. Every rung has something different in their learner outcome that they have to achieve. But all together makes that whole umbrella stay. So there is your overarching organizing idea. So the number that sits in front is always the grade. So whatever number starts with, so if it was a kindergarten teacher, they'd have a K, everybody else has a number. The next piece, this LS, stands for living systems. And it's kind of intuitive the way we did it. Earth systems is ES, space is S, matter is M. So it kind of flows quite nicely with your organizing ideas. Behind it is where it could be a little bit more complicated. So both of these, and I chose them for a reason, have a number with a decimal in them. So when we go through all of these new documents, sometimes I have a learner outcome. So here's an example. I have a learner outcome in grade 5 that says students investigate the internal systems of organisms and explain how they support biological processes. But that might have number of cusp rows underneath. Like there might be 3 or 4 rows underneath one learner outcome. And that's where the confusion often comes in, is where are we working? Which one are we on? Each time you have a new cusp, a new knowledge, understanding, skill, and procedure, you're going to get new knowledge, you're going to get new understandings and new skills and procedures. Each one of those blocks is unique. They all tie together, but they're unique. So to tell them apart, this is the first learner outcome in grade 5. It's the first learner outcome for living systems in grade 6. If there was 2, you'd see a 2 there, but most of them are just 1. This is the first cusp, the first set of knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures in that learner outcome for grade 5, or in that learner outcome for grade 6. If you take your mouse and scroll down to the next page, you will see that you have another cusp that shows up. Same learner outcome. The learner outcome never changes. It's just the cusp that changes. So this is the second row of cusps with that learner outcome, so it gets a decimal 2. So if there's a decimal behind it, it just simply is telling you there's multiple rows of cusps coming your way. So the bigger the document or the bigger number of rows of cusps, the more I have to cover, obviously. So that's kind of how that's been put together. So the scope and sequence that I'm going to show you here is a tool that you are welcome to have a look at, or it's that one that we looked at before. But again, it helps to unpack, we just looked at it, what is the sequential order? And the reason that becomes important is, especially if I'm teaching a split grade, what have I got that's sitting together that I might leverage for concepts where I start the group together, but then I stop a group and then I keep going a little bit with the group. So we won't get into split grades and unpacking all that, but that's a reality for lots of us, is that we have multiple grades in a classroom. So this helps me to kind of see how those would fit together. You also have a document called the concept progressions, and Ted's going to put that one into the chat box for you too. I'm going to ask you to bring it up on your screen, and I'm going to ask you to scroll through until you find the purple header called Living Systems. They're all there, but we're just going to do one today because we can't unpack everything. We won't have time to do that. So bring that one up on your screen. It'll be easier to see on your own computer than to try and watch mine. And the concept progression is color-coded. So you notice that if you're scrolling back and forth, it changes from organizing idea to organizing idea. So we're working with this light purple colored one. That's just a color that we chose for living systems. But what this is a sheet for you, the teacher. This has nothing to do with the kids. This is about helping you, especially now in your first year of 4 to 6, it just bridge the gap of what are the big rocks. Like, I don't even know what the big rocks are. I haven't taught this yet. So this is a little bit of a cheat sheet for you to go to say, oh, in grade 4, we're doing structure and we're doing function and we're talking about organisms and we're talking about sensory structures. When I go to grade 5, I'm using that. I'm talking about biological systems, and I'm going to be talking about organisms and how those biological systems work within them. So this is a tool for you to kind of see how those concepts are starting to unfold. But it also lets you go back and have a look at, well, then what the heck did they already do? Because we don't want to spend time reteaching things that aren't actually in our grades curriculum. We want to make sure that we're picking up key concepts that they needed. So there might be some things that live over here in grade 1 or in grade 2 or in grade 3 that I need to know. Now remember, your grade 3s are coming from the new 3 into 4. But the new 5s this year in September and 6s, they don't have that new 4 necessarily, depending on where your school is. So that's where I need to know some of those pieces. A lot of our organizing ideas also have explicit First Nations statements in there to be covered. And again, we heard loud and clear right from the get-go, I don't have any resources for First Nations. So we build that into your slide decks as well. So when we get to the sample that we're going to use for a slide deck, you'll have a better idea. Let me see if I can get this larger here. There we go. With each grade, Ted does a beautiful job of, he's such a Miro fan, and he does a great job of putting these concept maps together. But the concept map is really for you again. It's for you, the teacher. Now, if you want to use it with the children, that's fine. But the intent was here to say, you got those big rocks. Now, what exactly in all of those columns of knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures, I got all this stuff written there. What does it really break down into? And that's what this is. So here's an example of Living Systems grade 4, and it's showing you that we're talking about structure and function. So we're going to have organisms, and the organisms could be plants or humans, organisms, animals. So what kinds of structures do animals have? What kinds of body parts are used for specific functions? What do plants have that have specific functions? And so on. This has been one of the sheets that we have heard loudly from teachers saying, we love it, because at least it helps me to break down what my unit could look like. How you want to do it in the order you want to do it, that's entirely up to you. That's your call. But you have at least got something you can refer to. What we also do want to make sure is you understand this is a sample. We are not saying this is the sample. This is the only way to do it, because it's not. Just going to bring it back down to size here. So grade 5s, you also have one grade 6s, you also have one. So it's just giving you a chance to have a look at, as I move from structure and function into grade 5, I'm talking about systems, biological systems, the processes that happen within those systems. Notice the types of systems that we're going to talk about. And remember, they're not Bio 30 students. We're not getting deep into technical chemical pieces, but they do get pretty into the musculoskeletal. We're not asking them to name every 104 bones in the body. That's not it. But they do have to know some of the major ones, and they should be able to. One of the activities in the slide deck that we gave you is, here's a site to go to, cut out all the bones in paper and let them create their own skeleton. Can they, in groups, put it together a body? That's a great activity for kids. They learn so much. They don't have to know the names of them all, but it's just a great activity for them to do. So you have these concept maps that will help to unpack your unit. You will look at this unit, and your colleague across the hall from you might look at that and see something completely different as a starting point. If you plan together, great. If you're doing your own, you're all still going to cover the same thing. Just how you come at it might be very different. And that is where this curriculum has been embraced by teachers. They're really actually liking that part of it, is that they have flexibility to sort of tackle it in the way that they want to. So when we get to grade 6, we're talking about ecosystems. We're talking about what is an ecosystem? What's the characteristics? How does it survive? How do we get oxygen? What are the important characteristics? Well, oxygen is one. How does that happen? How do plants play a role in this? We talk about photosynthesis. We do not get into Bio 20 depth photosynthesis, but we do get into photosynthesis. They have to understand that they're producing sugars, and they have to understand that the byproduct is oxygen, but they're taking in the carbon dioxide. And yeah, it's okay for us to show them the chemical symbols for that. So again, there's tools that you have that you can use for that we will provide. I'm going to pause just for a moment. Are there any questions that we should address, Ted, or are we good to go?
It looks like we're good to go. There are some questions in the chat, but I'm answering them. I saved some for the end, but I think we'll be good to go. Jenny, I'll answer your questions shortly.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you to a sample. We're going to look at what is available to me right now. So this afternoon, I wanted to plan a unit. Where could I learn something about the unit that I want to plan? So we're going to go to grade 4. This is what it looks like on the ARPDC site. So I just want you to know every organizing idea in grades 4, 5, 6 has its own page. It will have its own video recording. This is going to get updated. Some of these are old, and so Ted and I would like to update some of these. You are always provided with the presentation slide deck, a copy of it. So just like you're going to get today, is what you would get for each organizing idea. Any additional slide decks, so sometimes when the resources that we give you have their own slide decks, or for those of you who were with me, and lots of you were yesterday as we moderated for Ange, when Ange unpacked the computing science, she had a ton of resources in there. But we also said, computing science, not my wheelhouse. And we heard that loud and clear too at the very beginning. I have never taught computing science. That's an option in my school. I wouldn't even know where to start. It's okay. Take a breath. We got you covered. Ange has gone in. She looked at our examples in living systems and created a lesson that you're welcome to use in your first year. Use the lesson, use her slide deck, and it will cover the computing science, link it directly to your grade's living system. It's different in each grade. So there are a lot of resources already done for you that you'll be able to leverage. You don't have to use anything. You can look at it and say, that doesn't really work for me. I want to use something else. That's fine. Okay, this is not saying you must do. There's also resources, activities, if we found investigations, if we have handouts, if we have card sorts, you're going to do one of those today. Those are the kinds of things that we provided in there. This is the very first one that we did after the introduction. There is an introductory video, and I'll talk about that at the end. That introductory video is a must-see. That would be your starting point. Watch that introductory video first. Then go pick wherever you want to start to plan, and then go from there. But living systems was the session 2. It was the first one that we did. And we really morphed in how we put things together. So we're hoping to go back and update this one. But everything that's in there is going to work for you. There's nothing there. So I'm going to bring it up. At some point, Ted, just maybe a little bit later, if you can throw the card sort into the chat box, that would be great. You're going to get you just to stop listening to me for a little bit and do a little bit of work. So I'm going to take you to the grade 4 slideshow that is in there. And it's going to take a minute here. I'm not going to go through every slide here, but what I just want to do is just jump on a few things and show you what's available. And I'm not sure why we're taking a whole long time to load here. So the beginning of this, while it's loading, I'm not sure why it's taking this long. I might go back and start again. When you go into any of the slide decks, the first two, living systems and matter, we will go back through the whole notion of what is surface, deep, and transfer and tie it specifically to that. After those first two, we said, you know, we're not going to do that anymore. You've heard it enough times. You probably made those connections. Okay, I'm not sure why I'm not loading here, so I'm just going to try it and go down here a bit. When we get through to the third one, you won't see that anymore. So again, if you're quite comfortable with it, there's definitely skip through some of those slides and move through. So I'm going to skip right down to the topic of concepts. And I'm going to ask you in a minute to have your numbered outcomes document handy, because we're just going to have a look at that as well. So the concepts are those rocks that we've been talking about. What are the big rocks? Let me see if it'll bring it up now. There we go. What are the big rocks I have to teach in my grade? And finding those big rocks on your own is really important. You have that concept progression that we've shown you. You can always refer to that. But once you're faced with your numbered outcomes document, you start looking in a knowledge column, and you look in the understanding column, and you look in the skills and procedures column, you have all this stuff there. You're saying, oh, there's so much to do. But we still need to know, what are the big rocks that are living in all those columns? And you will find that they consistently go back and they repeat themselves. So just a reminder of what a concept is. It's a noun. You're looking for a noun. What am I looking for in my lesson to build? A noun. What is that noun? What is it saying about that noun? So go through and find those nouns that, and it's usually one word, maybe two. It's not a sentence. That's all you're looking for. And just highlight them. For the first time, just highlight them. That's why I say have that document on your table. And when you highlight it, you'll start to see the same things showing up over and over and over again in all of those columns. That's a good thing, because that's telling you there's the rock I need to unpack with the students. This is where my big ideas are that I need to be working with the students. So you have these examples in here. I'm not going to go through all of them. But when you look even at just this picture here, remember I said, depending on where you live, depending on what you like to do, depending on what your interests are, depending on whether science is your jam or, yeah, I've got it, I have to teach it, but it's not my world, you're going to see things differently. If I just show you this picture, some of you will have zeroed in on the mountains. Some of you saw a beautiful blue sky. Some of you saw rocks and friends. Some of you saw other stuff. But if I said, I'd like you to look at this picture through the lens of weather, the concept of weather, most of your eyes are going straight to the sky. You're screening it out already. But if I said, look at it through a lens of conservation or ecology, most of you are looking at the garbage that's sitting on top of here. So the lens, the concept that we want to look at a topic or an organizing idea through helps us to focus the students on where we want to go. And that's important. If you want good suggestions, keep calendars. Calendars have the best pictures. And I don't need to have a whole text of stuff on a screen. I can just put up a picture like this and have a conversation. So here's what I'd like you all to do. We're all going to be grade 4 teachers just for a minute. Can you go to find grade 4 living systems? And I'd like you to find 4LS1. In other words, the very first page of living systems in grade 4. So that's page 32 on your outcomes document, just to save you a bit of looking. And what you have in front of you right now is I've highlighted a concept. the concept of organisms. I'm seeing that, I'm looking at it, I see organism. It doesn't matter how many times I see it. It's just when I see a noun, I'm going to highlight it. What I want you to do very quickly with that paper and pencil that I asked you to grab when we first started this morning, just jot down just on what you're seeing on the screen. Don't do the whole document, just that little piece. What are the other ones that you would highlight or that you would write down as concepts? What are you seeing as concepts in the knowledge column, in the understanding column, and in the skills and procedures? And look above. Look in the learner outcome, look in the guiding question, look in the organizing idea. What are the concepts that live there? So finding those concepts is key. Now, somebody said to me, oh, what if I didn't highlight one or I didn't circle it and I missed it? And I said, but you probably still teach it? Yeah, but I didn't call it a concept, but you're still teaching it. This is for you. This is to make sure that we're covering. You can compare it with your concept map that was created. But the whole idea is that you should feel confident that when you're going through it, you can find those big rocks quickly. So you will get really good at this. You'll get very fast at this. But initially, it might take you just, 2 minutes to run through it and go, oh, I'm not sure if it is or it isn't. If you miss one, it's not going to, no one's going to die. No one is going to not pass the grade. And if you circled something and it wasn't a concept, nobody's going to have any problems there either. But you're going to get the majority. And that's really all this activity is finding what is it that I would look for. So on my screen now, you're seeing some of the things you probably wrote down. The yellow are the concepts of content. There's the content, the big rocks in the content that I need to teach. The purple is you also have concepts of skill. What is the skill I need to teach them before I start asking them to do it? So I need to teach them how to classify. In other words, what does it mean to classify? Not just go do it and classify plants and animals. I haven't even taught you what it means yet. So I need to teach that skill. I need to teach the skill of analyze. So what's an analysis? What's a relationship? If it says relate, blah, 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 well, how do they know how to relate it if you haven't even shown me what a relationship is? That goes back to that conversation that Ted unpacked on Monday. So again, I'm not going to spend time on that. So this is a practice I would do just initially. Just do it for your first couple of units that you're doing, just to give yourself practice and confidence that you're finding those big rocks. So again, here's an example of, there's your concept map. It's living right in this presentation that I'm showing you. There is the same progression that we just showed you. And then we even pull out, what are some of the key concepts that you're unpacking? And what are some of the big rocks that they should know from the previous grade? So if I'm doing a pre-assessment, maybe I want to do a little bit of work with that language and see what they know. And if I'm hearing good things, great, let's just dive into grade 4. If I'm not hearing good things, or I'm hearing they're close, but they're not really quite there, then maybe I want to do a little bit of work. And where could I find that little bit of work? In the slide deck. We're going to give you slides that you can use in order to go back and pick up concepts. If you don't need them, ignore it, fly through them and don't use them. Okay, so just getting an idea of how we might use some of those different pieces. On Monday, Ted talked about, I put a couple of slides in there for you here. We won't unpack each line, but the instructional strategies. Different kinds of strategies are good for surface. Different kinds of strategies are good for deep. But just different kinds of strategies engage kids. If we do the same thing every day, it's kind of boring for them. So how do we jump out of the box and still meet the outcomes that we want to meet? One of them ones I love to do is a card sort. So you got a card sort in the chat box. Now, normally, if we were doing this in person, we have these all cut up for you and you're actually doing this by hand. I have a whole box of those ones that you've shared with you today. I would just make them once, do them on cardstock, and have them in your class. These were the grade 1 cards. But what I'm trying to say to you here is, just because there was a tool that was made in grade 1 doesn't mean we can't leverage it all the way across the board. Remember the mountain picture? The lens I'm going to ask you to look at will determine what you do with that. and how we unpack it with the students. So in this case, this card sort that you have in front of you, you have numbers at the bottom of each of those pictures. I just want you very quickly on your piece of paper that you have, I want you to take those pictures that you see and put them into two groups. Just what numbers would you put into two groups? I'm not telling you what the groups are. You tell me what the groups are. So just quickly fly through them. Or if you just want to mentally note, what would the two groups be that you would have as you go through? What would they be? I'll just give you a second to go through them because I don't want to spend too much time on this. So how would you group them into two groups? So if you group them into living and non-living, you just passed grade 1. You've got it. Like that's the work we do with them. So now if we said, let's take away the things that are non-living, let's go to grade 3. How would you organize the things that you think are living? Just flip through the cards again. What kind of groups would you put them in now? And there's no one right answer here. And this is where the power of conversation will come in the classroom. So just looking at the pictures that are living things, how would you group them? Okay, I'm just going to move us ahead but you're going to get the idea. But remember, and I said we also want to talk about unpacking skills. And sometimes we've heard from teachers saying, well, you can't ask kids in grades 4, 5, 6 what the relationships are. And the answer is we sure can. Because if we've taught them what a relationship is, this is the question that we ask grade 1. So if students are starting to be exposed to that kind of thinking, don't just ask me to copy down a definition from the board. Let me work with the definition, let me learn it, and then let me start making connections by asking these kinds of questions. That's moving away from the easy, true, false, fill in the blank to making me make connections. So these are sample questions that we put into the grade 1 slide deck. Here's possibilities. You went plant and animal. And then you probably took even those plants and animals and you could break those up further. So in grade 3, we even break them up into maybe you put mammals together. They don't know the word mammal. That's not even what they did. They actually went by legs. They put 4 legs together, 2 legs or 2 wings together, no legs together down here, sorry, and then no legs at all. So these guys move, they got 4 legs. These guys have 2 legs, 2 wings, they move. These guys move ever so slowly, fish, snake, and a snail, and plants don't move. They move, and that's a conversation to have. How do they move? They grow, but they don't actually pick up overnight and walk over to a new garden and plant themselves, right? So we have that conversation with students, and this is a screenshot of what students did, how they grouped them. So I'm looking through the lens of what I'm doing in grade 3. Now let's go to grade 4. If I'm going to go to grade 4, I might ask you the question, look at those cards. We can just do one of them quickly. And if I said based on their appearance, well, that could have been grade 3. What about habitat? How would you organize the living things in those cards based on habitat? What would you put together? What would their reasoning be? There's the power of the conversation. It's not, yeah, there could be some wrongs, but it's really when you walk around, you could say, tell me a little bit about why you put that in that group. Talk to me about that. Why is that there? And then you start hearing them talk and you might hear, oh, they got a little misunderstanding. Is, oh, wow, they've got a really good understanding about why they put that there. So you're already unpacking your grade 4. This is how my formatives, but keeping them engaged at the learner outcome that I want them to do. And I could do it by structures, right? Legs, or do they have wings or whatever, beaks, like anything. Kids will come up with things that you didn't even think about. They never cease to amaze me how they group things and what their reasons are. And sometimes the reasons are wrong, but that's okay. We don't have to say, no, that's wrong. We can say, ask them a question about, well, how do you see that fitting in with this one? Oh, well, it doesn't. Oh, well, maybe it doesn't belong in this group. Okay, I'm going to move it. Okay, that's the whole idea. That's that learning by doing rather than just telling. So grade fives, I could say, take those cards and I'd like you to sort them based on the kinds of biological systems that they use. What common biological systems? So again, it's those kinds of things that we can do with the cards. Grade sixes, I could say, what ecosystem would you put each of those groups in? And they may be lots of common ones. There may be some that are completely different. And some kids might say to you, I don't even know what that animal is. I've never seen it before. I don't even know what it is. So just a side note, there's a number on each card because these are the indigenous animals to Alberta, and that's one of the outcomes in grade 2. So if they have to know some, that's not all of them, but some indigenous animals from Alberta, those are all from Alberta. And some teachers said, I don't know what they are. So the number on the bottom, there's a cheat sheet for the teacher. So we gave you that as well. So these are the kinds of things. Yes.
Sorry, just a reminder, we're at 30 minutes left
Okay.
here.
All right. So you're getting the idea that these are the kinds of resources that you're going to find in here. You see that there's sample slide decks about how do I teach them about structure in grade 4. Well, let's start with something I can see, a building, a box, a book, something. So we start to make connections. I could go back and use that slide deck. So I'm just going to skip through these. These case studies is another way to unpack some of these where I give students some things to read. And then I'm not teaching you, I'm just asking you to read it. And now I'm saying to you, what did you see that's connected between them? Instead of saying, birds do this, dogs do this, this is what they have in common. I want them to read it and tell me what do they have in common. I can fill in gaps. I can ask open questions. So your entire slide deck, regardless of the grade that you are in, will have those kinds of materials in it. They'll also have examples, and you're welcome to use the examples if that helps to build a lesson. There's lots of links to videos. What we don't want is just video ask questions, video ask questions. A video is there to enhance, could be the case study. I want you to just watch the video. Now let's figure out what you learned from it. So this is the kind of thing that you're going to see as you move through. So I'm just going to keep going. Again, we talk about some of the connections to other subjects, and that's important. They should not think of science in a box, right? It belongs to every subject. Those of you who were at Nicole Lamoureux's session, she did scientific methods. The computing science was done by Ange Deering yesterday, and she gave you a wealth of information. So again, we're going to share some links to that if you weren't there and you need to go to them. So these are strategies that Ted has covered. Questions are in here. We also give you surface level questions, deep level questions, and transfer questions. Again, you're welcome to use them, abridge them, change them, not use them. I also say go out, if you want to buy a supply for yourself right now, go to the dollar store and buy a bunch of hula hoops. Best diagrams that you can use for Venn diagrams, throw them on the floor. You could have 6 different centers on the floor, and kids could be up out of their seats with a card sort doing 6 different things, just kind of asking the questions that we did. So these are just examples that you're going to find. I'm going to go right to the end of this. You had a concept map. Maybe you want to give them terms that they've learned and ask them to make a concept map. But before they do that, you have to teach me what a concept map is. So these resources that you have are given to you because you don't have a textbook. And you're not going to get a textbook. You're not going to get a module that says, here is living systems, grade 4, end to beginning to end, this is what you teach. So you really do have to kind of see, how does this kind of look in my mind? How do I see this? And if you find that that concept web that you have, that we shared with you at the beginning, is a good starting point for you, great. We've given you lots of links of free places that you can go and get pictures like this. This came from an elementary, a grade 2, grade 3. But if I wanted to use it as review, structure, function, great conversations. All right, so you've got case studies given to you.
Welcome to the first.
I want to just go to the end. There are more resources. You have access to every grade on the ARPDC site. So if you wanted to grab something from another grade, have at her. You have full access to everything. So if you don't have any resources in the classroom for some of the topics that you're going to be, or outcomes that you're going to be teaching, then most cases, the slide deck has way more than you're ever going to use. Okay, you're not going to use them all. So pick and choose, go through it, decide what you want. So that gives you sort of an overview of what a slide deck and all of the contents that are built into it. There's links in the slide deck that you get, and then there's additional resources that you're going to follow as you go through as well. Are there any questions about that site? Remember, the computing science is built right side by side, because that was the one that gave people the most sort of grief and concern, was how do I unpack that? So Ted unpacked for you some ideas of how I could introduce surface level concepts. Those are built in here. I'm not going to go through those again. And we talked about skills and procedures. So a list of the verbs that are common, the skills that you're going to be unpacking in grades 4 to 6. And you also see sort of the frequency of how many times they show up. So you see which ones are kind of showing and coming through. And the one that's right next to it, you can kind of see what the K to 3s had, where you have dark pink going all the way through. Those are ones that started in kindergarten, they kept going through, and they keep going through in 4 to 6. So you see some of the big rocks that exist in the skills and procedures as well. So this is the scientific method one that Ange did. It was done, scientific method that Nicole did. That was done on August the 20th, and that'll be posted. And she also gave you a nice sort of schedule to find, how do I unpack an investigation? And as grade 4, 5, 6 teachers, you will have to go back to the grade 2 and pick up what are the steps in an investigation where they learn it in grade 2. And then you're going to unpack each of those additional pieces of your year. So grade 6s, you're kind of at the top end. So you might want to watch that video and get a good sense of what it is I have to do. Grade 6 is the first time that we use the term hypotheses. Up until then, we're talking about questions. So just keeping that in mind. All right, computer thinking or computer sciences and this computational thinking and design thinking were unpacked by Ange yesterday, and you've got resources for those. Okay, so let's move to some resources that we have created are CPAR documents. Now, if you've been teaching math, you're probably familiar with them. If not, you're going to learn about them very quickly. But before we go to that, one of the other things that happens is that there are some tools that have been built in the background that you can help. And one of those is the gizmos. And if you're not familiar with gizmos, Karen is here today, and she's going to unpack some of that with you very quickly and give you some insight as to some PD that you could do with her. I highly recommend doing at least one 45-minute session with her, getting the information so that you can go forward and use it. And then we'll address what's in the CPAR for you right after that. So I'll start sharing and I'll let you get in.
Actually, Chris, could you continue to share? Because I think I think it'll just be quicker.
Okay.
If you continue with our slides. Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
So yeah, so as Chris mentioned, gizmos are aligned with your grades 4, 5, 6 curriculum. Gizmos, we do offer many sessions through ARPDC. So these are our flyers, and Chris has included links to the sessions that we have upcoming. We also have some sessions next week. I will say they're not on this specific document, but on Monday and Tuesday we have 1-hour sessions, so you can check the ARPDC website. And in 1 hour, we give you an overview of the resources available and how to specifically find simulations that align with your curriculum. We also show you how to navigate the Gizmos platform and share with you all the resources that are available, the lesson materials. You can go to the next slide, Chris, and click again. So my name's Karen Bloomhagen, and I'm the implementation coordinator for Gizmos in Alberta. I'm also an Alberta teacher. I work specifically with K to 6 teachers in accessing Gizmos and in helping support with lesson planning, integrating these these resources in the classroom with your students. Okay, next slide. And so right now you do have Gizmos. Gizmos, a license has been purchased by Alberta Education, and you will see on the New Learn Alberta site that there is a Gizmos collection. There's 140 simulations. I believe it's about 90 for math and 50 for science. And there are some of the materials are provided on the New Learn Alberta website. But included in the Alberta Ed license, you have direct access to the Explore Learning platform. And the Explore Learning platform, it's the biggest simulation library actually in the world. So I mentioned that. But you can search for additional resources, and there are supplementary materials on this site. And I know there's been some questions about French materials. So when you access Gizmos on the New Learn Alberta site, you will not find the French translated materials. So if you're a Francophone teacher, French immersion teacher, you do have to access the French, we have French translated lesson materials. You can access them directly on our platform. In order to set up an account to access, you'll have to reach out to me. So if you don't have a Gizmos account and you would like one, I'm the coordinator and I can set one up for you. And my colleague, if you're from Calgary, my colleague Lindsay supports CBE and the Calgary Catholic as well. And thanks, Tracy. All right, next slide. So what are Gizmos? Actually, I should ask, and maybe if you have used Gizmos, how many of you have used Gizmos? You could give a thumbs up or pop it in the chat. And I support Central Alberta, so I support most of Alberta, and I can provide Lindsay's contact for sure, and I'll provide my contact at the end. I have just a couple more slides. But what are Gizmos? So they are online learning simulations for both teaching and learning, science and math. They are, when you take a look at them, you'll see that the reading level is probably about grade 3 and up. So I do recommend for K-2 that there is some customization when using the lesson materials that go with the simulations. They're also very interactive and engaging. And I know personally I've used them in my classroom I had used them for 15 years, and my students really benefited a lot from using them. They do help you to address some of the scientific methods and investigation components of the new curriculum as well. So I do recommend them for that. I think next slide, Chris. And this is just a sample of a couple of them that we have. This is the critter count, which is great for learning multiplication in math. And the other one was the growing plants. Can we, next one? Yep. And so since we're talking about living systems today, I pulled 3 that are aligned with the grade 4, 5, 6 curriculum. So students can learn more about plants as organisms, and they can see that plants have parts, and the specific simulation delves into the flower. And it's really cool. Students can see the parts and explore and learn what each part does. So even though I may not assess them on all of the parts of the flower, that might be more of a junior high concept, they can still understand the big rock ideas that Chris talked about. Next slide. Oh, it didn't load.
Okay, let's try this one.
Okay. For the grade 5, the one that didn't load, there is a great gizmo for learning about the digestive system. And the digestive system, again, that gizmo is concept-based. So I could use that gizmo in Bio 30 to teach like really detailed, in-depth information about the digestive system. But students in grade 5 can learn about the key parts of the digestive system and how they work together for the survival of us as humans, and also how they carry out the task of digestion. So it's really interesting for students just to explore perhaps the bigger organs, and probably wouldn't go into the enzymes that are shown in that simulation. And this one here for grade 6, it's aligned with the grade 6 curriculum. So we're talking about ecosystems. And this is a fairly new one. it gets into the coral reefs and how factors that affect the health of a coral reef. And students can adjust sliders and investigate different, they can investigate the effects of temperature or pH on the coral reef. And then they can also see how the individual species interact with each other. So there's a lot of great learning that can go along with this particular gizmo. All right, next one. This is a sample of the lesson materials. So every gizmo comes with a set of 4 lesson materials. There's a teacher guide. There's also a student exploration sheet. They are provided to you as PDF, Word, and also as a Google Doc. And I do highly encourage customizing to best meet the learning outcomes that your students are working on. So I wouldn't suggest copying the whole package when you take a look at the student exploration sheets, not to copy the whole package because there's multiple activities that go to higher levels. Really just zero in on those that help your students meet the learning outcomes. Okay, next one. That's a sample of the student exploration sheet. And there's a vocabulary page as well as a key. I will pop this link in the chat for you. So we have an Alberta Gizmo site, and there are resources that we've created specific for Alberta teachers. The site is updated about once a month. This in the chat. And our contact information is on this website. So you can explore that and find out a little bit more about gizmos, and my contact as well as Lindsay's will be on that site. And next slide. As Chris mentioned, we do offer professional development, and there's no cost for this. It's included in the Alberta Education License. So Lindsay and I support individual teachers, schools, school divisions. And so we're very happy to connect with you if you're interested in learning more about gizmos through PD session. And I just realized I do have another link that I want to pop in there because Chris, you talked about the literacy connections. So let me just grab that link.
Is that one on here? No, it isn't. Okay.
No, so it's kind of a long link here. So hopefully that will open for you. And it's a living document. So as more of these resources are added to the document, it will just, keep updating. But this is fairly new. So some of our teammates are working on elementary literacy connections, which students are learning science and math, but there are literacy-based activities infused. And each of the lessons, oh, you've got it there. Yeah, and so this is an overview of what the literacy connections are. And if you can click to the second page, just in the bottom left-hand corner there. Okay, yeah. There you go. And so there's quite a few lessons that have been prepared for the science gizmos. And typically what you'll see there is a short slide deck that you can use to introduce your lesson to the students. And then it links to our Gizmos platform. Our site provides science, they're called task cards. So they're a little shorter lessons compared to the student exploration sheets, but I definitely encourage you to check those out. And the next page is the math, and that's just beginning to be built, but there's quite a few there right now that would probably work for grade 4, 5, 6 math.
You guys, these are amazing. I had spoken to Karen the first time she showed it to me, and there was just a couple of them. I was just blown away. Like, you really need to check these out. They're amazing.
All right. And so this is my contact information, and I'll just pop my email in the best way to contact either Lindsay or I is through alberta@explorelearning.com. So then the email will get directed to the correct person. And I just popped my email in the chat. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you, Karen. I really appreciate you going through that. Karen came on when we were doing the initial sessions as well and did the same thing in some of the recordings that you're going to see. So,
Karen,
okay.
just a couple other
Sure.
questions put up. I thought maybe let's ask them now quickly.
Yes.
Very quickly. Is there a Southern Alberta contact south of Calgary?
South of Calgary. So if we're talking like Palliser, Horizon, West Winds, I am the contact outside of Calgary.
And there's one other one. Here's the question. Is it just the teachers that get to interact with Gizmos with the free account, or can we just add students to our account so they can be the ones conducting the simulations as well?
So there's two ways to access Gizmos, both on the New Learn Alberta site and on our site, and both teachers and students can access. I know that I've had a lot of questions about sometimes there's people are having trouble having their students access on New Learn Alberta. So I would definitely, there's a contact us button on New Learn Alberta. So you can always click that and have your students access on New Learn Alberta, because they do need a division username and password. And if you do set up an account on the Explore Learning platform, you can set up student accounts and they're linked to your account, and then they can log in and access as well. So yes. And I see a question.
Did that answer your question, Michelle?
Yeah,
She
sure did.
Okay.
She sign each person up?
Yeah, and what happens is I send an email invitation to teachers, and then they set up their accounts. And sometimes the process is handled division-wide, but if you haven't had an account set up yet, reach out to me and I can set that up for you.
Any other questions of Karen?
No, that's it.
Okay. No, that's great. That's awesome.
Thanks,
All right,
Karen.
so we're going to fly in the next 11 minutes here, because I'm cognizant that a lot of you are going to go to Cheryl right away at 10 o'clock. So just to finish up our slide deck, we're into the resources pieces, and we're going to share this. We're actually going to give you the links to these in the chat box in just a minute. But the CPAR documents, if you're not familiar with them, in an attempt to help with the absence of resources, we started to put things together for math and for science, to have sort of a place that you could go and get ideas from, perhaps maybe even get some sample summative assessments, some sample formative assessments, resources, etc. And so they're very similar. The math is set up very similar to science. They have a little bit of differences, but I just want to go through one of them very quickly. Now here's the preface I'm going to do very quick. I put this yellow right here. Any document, these are rough documents. These are not posted yet for science. You guys are getting these hot off the press, literally, with Ted and I working on them. We will be finishing them up next week, but we just felt that giving you even the draft version that we have right now is a good start for you to get some ideas and some places to go for materials. So if you see something with a yellow on it, ignore it. It's not an updated piece. It's just a cut and paste as we create the template. So just ignore it. But we will be updating those. And so that's why we're only showing it with you guys today. This is not posted on the site. So I'm going to go into grade 4 right away here. You can find on the ARPDC site, there are CPAR documents for computing science. Ange did an entire series for every grade. There's some for K-3, they're already finished if you cross grade or you need to see some of the other ones in their completion. The math is also done for K-3. 4 to 6 has got really tight timelines of stuff that's coming up by the end of the month. So you're going to see all of those pop up. I would sort by grade there. And then by organizing ideas, how you can sort them when it comes into the science as well. Here's the link to the introductory video I mentioned to you. This is a watch this first, just once, but watch it first before you launch into planning for science, because then you have all that stuff that Ted talked about and other pieces that we would introduce. And then you kind of got an overview of it all, and then you can kind of move on to wherever you want to go. You don't have to do living systems. However, we started with living systems in the draft. We went to matter, then we did earth systems, energy, and space. And we were going to change it, but we actually found that the concepts that lived in living systems fell right into place with matter, and they interchanged back and forth. So we grabbed things from matter to work with or from living systems to work in matter. And then the same thing was happening when we went to earth systems. It grabbed from those two. Does that mean you have to do it that way? No. Just, you always have to be cognizant of what is the concept I'm teaching? Where else does the concept live? So where are the connections that I have to make? So that's the order that we presented in. That's the order the sessions were numbered in. But again, it's your call to decide. So let's just quickly have a look at a CPAR document for grade 4. When you're doing the survey here, we'll throw everything into the chat box for you. So the document looks like this. I'm not going to read every line of it, but they're all similar in their design. These are connections directly to Learn Alberta. You want your competencies, your numeracy progressions. These will be hyperlinked to the document. So if you did the first cusp already and you wanted just the second cusp information, you can click here and it'll bounce you down in this document. The more cusps you have, the bigger the document becomes. If you have 5 cusps, I guarantee this document will be 60, 70 pages long, because that's how much is in here for resources. You will have the verbs. We have a set of verb definitions for you that are standard that you can use for across the province, so that everybody's kind of using the same language. Those are all hyperlinked in here. You start with your Organized India guiding question. Here are the links for the computing science. The scientific method that we were talking about are all built directly into the document. And then we go by cusp. So 4.1.1 or Living Systems 1.1, here's the essential vocabulary and the definitions are hyperlinked in there for you. What's the prerequisite knowledge? What are some common misconceptions they bring to the topic you're about to, or the outcome that you're about to teach to them? I know I can statements for those students or for those schools that are still using those. There was a big request, could we keep those? So we did. And then what you will see is a familiar color. Those are your knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures that came directly from your curriculum document. However, they've already been separated out by what part of that was surface. Like of all that stuff I looked at in that first cusp, what of it was surface? And you can tell by looking over here. And here are the skills and procedures that need to be taught at surface level first. So we've already kind of worked it through for you so that you know that this is ground root foundation stuff. I got to work on that. And once I've done some of that, then I'm going to get into deep. So we've titled it here, Sample Surface Level. How do I teach some of those? Well, there's the card sort we just talked about. Here's some sample activities you can use. Use them, look at them, don't use them. Like this is entirely up to you to use what you want. We're just trying to mitigate that you're not sitting in front of the computer searching the website for hours and hours and hours for something that matches your curriculum. We tried to put some things together for you. On the right-hand side, you have formative sample questions that you could use for assessment. Here's another surface level one that talks about structures. Here's some videos you can do with it, some activities. Here's a formative that we placed in there. And then as we introduce the understanding, well, now we're using all that terminology that we've learned, the surface level materials, and I'm putting it into the deep level activities. So now you're seeing what are some sample deeps that I can do. This is going to continue to be built. So you're getting the first rough copy of it, not the finished copy, next week. So here's something we're going to say to you. If you would like the updated version, because not everybody wants to use these, and that's totally fine. Send us an email sometime today, doesn't have to be right now, and we will just put you on a list, and when 10 and I are finished next week, we will send it to you. Okay, at the end of each cusp, you have a section on resources. We have resources that have been shared out by other school divisions. We have resources that have been done by other schools in other provinces, in other countries that we have permission to use. So this is a resource section for you. And Nate Stiller has from Red Deer, and Nate, I think he's still on, did a super job of unpacking some of these. His resources are linked in here, so have a good look at that. You also have Indigenous connections that would be put in here. Specific ones are things specific to your cusp, and then you have more general links that fit to grade 4 living systems, but not just what you just taught. There's some supportive learning for all learners for inclusion. And then there has been a supply list, science supply list created by Grand Prairie. It is a list. It is not the list. So if you are looking to put something in your school, first decide what you're going to teach. Like you have to decide what your units look like before you decide what you want to take from that list. So, and that's what she just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear that it's a list, but it's not the list. Don't go order everything that's on there. Here is a sample of where you'd find Karen's gizmos. She's already curated it for you. If you don't see one in your grade section, there isn't one. So don't go hunting for it. She's already said, these are the ones that work with this cusp that you're teaching. We have connections with the UK, and if there's a match, we will put it here. The UK has given us permission to use their resources they created for their teachers. So here's an example of one of those that you could use. And now we're into the next cusp. So new vocabulary, new prerequisite knowledge, new I can statements, new illustrative examples, new all that stuff. So it just keeps going for each row. You will have this for each grade, for each organizing idea. At the very, very bottom is a final section on literacy, because we also know that, and this is, if we have sample summatives, you're welcome to use them. When you download them, they'll download as an editable document, so you can add in, take out, change, whatever you want. Don't use them. However, it's up to you. At the bottom, you'll have sections from books. We were fortunate to have Pearson partner with us in the sense that when I was looking for books that we could give to teachers or doing the draft and the pilot, we couldn't find a lot in Canada, to be honest with you, but I found a ton in the US. But they were Pearson US, and so I phoned Pearson Canada. They sent them to me. I did a bunch of reading where I found a match and which one it belongs to, like which particular organizing idea and what number is linked in there. If there's an EPIC link, I've put it in. So if you see available through Pearson, this is a US book, but we can buy it through Canada. You don't have to order it from the US. So thank you to them for doing that for us, because that was a big help. Some have tons of books, some don't have books. So that's what a CPAR document is. You have lots of them to choose from. So I'm just going to skip down here to finish us off, being cognizant of time. Come on here. So here are all of your organizing ideas hyperlinked already to find them on the ARPDC site. So that would give you the slide deck, the video. That doesn't mean that we're not going to update things and that we're not going to still do things with those. But depending on the order that you want to do things, here is a fast place for you to find that. You'll have access to that with the slide deck when you get it. So we're going to put the link, the survey link, if you can take 1 minute. We really appreciate your feedback. If there's anything that we could do differently, or if you want more of something, please put that in to the comments there. Or if you want to just take the screenshot and do it through the QR code. And in the meantime, what we'll do in the chat box, once you're doing that, we'll put in the CPAR links and the link for the slide deck so that you have that at least to go away with today. So we'll just give you the minute to grab that link. So thank you very, very much, you guys. I really appreciate your 3 days of dedication and getting up so early this morning. So we are so available if you need anything answered. Here are all of our emails, so feel free to contact us at any time. You don't have to wait for a PD. If you have a question, you need something, send us an email. If you can't find something, send us an email. We'll gladly help you out. So don't spend time sort of trying to tread water when you don't have to. All right, thank you. Sorry,
There,
Ted.
your number one, you're still recording. If you want to keep on doing, we can. They do have a couple unanswered questions yet that I saved for the end here. So those of you who want to stick around, we can get those. So can I share those questions with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, first of all, there's something about the ELA CPARs have observation and discussion trackers. I'm not too sure what they are. And will they be available for science and math in the future? Are you familiar with science, the discussion trackers?
Um, Probably not. Actually, Ted had created a document that we used in the pilot with the K-3 teachers, and it was one where there was sort of an observation, but there was also it was actually a unit plan where you could put it in. But we're finding with the CPAR documents that teachers really aren't asking for that anymore, so we haven't done something like that. But I mean, that's something that we could definitely note. I know what you're referring to. And if you think that would be helpful for science, we could definitely look at that for sure. We can discuss it with the science team. Yep.
Another question with this is referring to the numbered outcomes document. I forget, is there a document that has it broken down for per grade, or is it all just a single document?
They are all single documents. The best place to get it by grade would be go to New Learn Alberta and simply isolate your grade and then print from there.
But it won't
Hi.
have it won't have the numbers on it.
It
Excuse
won't
me.
have numbers on it. Yeah. Yes.
Excuse me, Ted and Chris, that was my question. It's Rhonda. You know, I was able to sort the curriculum guide by a 4-5 split. But I'm wondering, do they have the numbered documents on the new Alberta Learn, or is that your special thing that you did and you set it up that way?
We set it up that way, but I'll be honest with you, quite a few adoptions have come, like even the universities are using it because they find it easy to navigate when you have a number. So, but it's not a requirement to use it. It's just that's how we have structured all of our resources, because it has made it easier for PLC groups to identify where they want to work. So we did keep it. So it's just on the ARPDC site, and all of them. Sorry.
I said, and I do like it, and I would see using it, but I was wondering if it was set up so you have 4-5 rather than the 3-4 split that you did in the document. If there's there's a format with the 4-5 side by side.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to look and see if we can do that. They were so finicky to put together. The way they're laid out is exactly how Alberta Ed put it together. Like they have 3-4 together, 5-6 together. So that's why we kept it that way. But you know what? Just send me an email reminder, Rhonda. I'll tinker with our doc version and see if it lets me play with that, or if it's just going to go wonky. But we can try.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Chris, do you have the QR code for the survey? I don't have that.
Right there.
There it is. Okay. Now the document that the document that we are referring to that Chris just went through is the CPAR document, CPAR. I'm just trying to look at some other questions here. Whoa, everything on my screen just disappeared. Karen, can you just confirm that Gizmo again are free this year, this coming up school year?
So Gizmos have been renewed for 2 years, and we're hoping plus. So yes, 2 years license right now. And again, if you would like an account, I should have said that if you email me, I do need to know your school name as well in order to set that up for you.
Katie, do you have a question?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, will any of these resources be made available for the French immersion teachers?
So there are definitely, Mary Lou Gumman is doing the translations, and she has posted already on ARPDC a number of the science resources in French. I'm not certain whether or not they'll translate a CPAR document. We'll have to see whether that's going to happen, but she has already posted a number of science. So you might want to have a look there and see what is available.
Okay, I'll definitely take a look again. I was able to go through the French, like when you click the English or the French, I was able to do that. And there were a few documents there, but it just wasn't the same slide decks that you were showing. So I was curious about those. And
yeah,
also,
she did change the slide decks because she found that she couldn't always find articles that matched in the same ones that we were using. So she did go a little bit different than ours. So there will be some differences for sure.
okay. And then for Gizmos, are there many in French as well for that, or pretty limited?
So the Gizmos themselves are in English. So when you look at a Gizmo, math, manipulative, and science, the simulation currently is in English, but the French supporting materials there's a set of French lesson materials that support. So you can take a look at that and gauge how many English words are too many on the simulation itself. But we do have the French translated materials.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Haley, question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sure can.
Excellent. First, thank you. This was super helpful. Those CPAR documents. So I took a picture of your emails. If I email you, can I get CPAR documents for more than just living systems? Can I get them for all the grade 4 content?
When they're done.
Awesome. And possibly to help out my colleagues, could I get them for grade 5 and 6 as well?
Absolutely. You've got the links in the chat box right now for living systems, and that's the only one that Ted and I have created so far. And as I said, it's by next week, those will be perfected and look much better than they do right now. It's just we've been struggling with all those sessions to get them all done. But we also have to discuss with the provincial team whether or not they wish us to continue to do those. This has always been a bit of a question as to whether or not we continue to do them. So I think you guys find them helpful, and we think they're helpful. So we're hoping that we're going to continue to do them.
Chris, what's the best way for people to get the updates?
I think right now, what I would say is send me an email. I'll just be the person. Send me an email and just put an email just saying grade 4, or you want 4-5 or 4-5-6, whatever. It doesn't matter how many grades you want. Just tell me if you want updates. Just send me an email and I'll just start a list. And then as we finish them, we'll fire them off to you. And then once they're posted on the ARPDC site, then we don't need to worry. But right now, you're just getting the raw documents.
And yes, you can share the slide deck that you hear with your coworkers. And can you repost your email again? There was a question about that. Is there a scope of time for each unit? Chris, there's that question again of what we do for time.
To be honest, I think there are some that are huge. I mean, Ted and I found that there are some units that are immensely large and very engaging for the kids, but you need time. Earth Systems is one of them. Like, it's big. Is there another one, Ted, that you would put above that? I don't know them.
Yeah. So living systems is long. Space would be the shortest.
Yeah.
And the others would probably be I mean, Earth System is quite a long one as well. So I would plan for making space your shortest one if you're going to equal your evenly, and perhaps the equal amount for the other 3. And that's not counting, again, computer science and scientific methods.
And the Earth and the space, I mean, you could do that at any time. If you want to have nice weather to lay outside, then you could do it now, or you could do it in spring. It just depends on, the length of night and day and those things. Or I would even suggest to you that you might even want to think about, could you start space now? Could you do a little bit more around Christmas time and do a little bit more in spring? Because part of that conversation, depending on what grade you have, is also they have to note that the constellations don't just stay in the sky in the same place. So if I could do some of that work and see how it's changing in real life, then that makes it that much easier. And same thing with living systems. Some people say, well, can't really do living systems in fall. It has to be in spring. And the answer is actually not. What if you had them grow some seeds now where they're using decreased sunlight and they're using only the light that's in the classroom? And then we do the same thing and we track it and we take pictures of it. And then we come back to it and maybe unfold more living systems in the spring, and maybe you do more of it there. But now you do a comparison. That's a huge and a wonderful investigation for them to do. So you have to see what works best for you. We can't say this is the way you would do it, but it's whatever works for you. And to be honest with you, the teachers who did it as the pilot and in the draft with us said, I need to go through it once. I just need to teach it once. So I'm just going to do it in the order you guys. They did it with us, but they didn't have everything available to them. And they just said, I'm going to do it in the order that you did. I'm just going to learn it first, and then I'm going to decide after I've done it once what I'm going to do. So what works for you? Michelle, question?
Hi, thank you for this morning. You've been awesome. Just a quick question, like as we're kind of putting our long-term year plans together, or would you guys just group it like we do it monthly, just for 2 months each, and then just weave scientific methods and computer science throughout? Or is there, do you have any suggestions with, it may not come out that way, but just how to outline it for those long-term plans to hand in?
That's really good, Michelle. And I should have said that as I was presenting. We made the assumption that computing science was not a standalone organizing idea per se, that it should be embedded in every organizing idea as you unpack it with the students. So that's why Ange came in and provided you with a slide deck and an activity at your grade level for each organizing idea, so that it wasn't a one and done and we kind of parked it. It's intended to become all the way through. So to your point, yes, you want scientific method and computing science to be intertwined. It doesn't mean you can't do some teaching of scientific method right up front and so that they understand what an investigation is and that stuff. That's fine. And lots of schools have done that as their first week starting point or whatever. But you really want both of those not to be organizing ideas that you say, I'm going to do a month of each one of these and then we're done. It doesn't really work that way. So really great question. They should be embedded.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there a link to that? Was that yesterday's session?
I'm sorry, which for the computing science?
Yeah.
It will be up. If it's not up already, you can email Ange, or I can just send me an email if you need something and I'll forward it to her and she'll share everything with you. Not a problem.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Any others, Ted, that we should address?
I know, again, just that time, how many weeks per unit? I think we answered that, Sherry. If not, then let us know and put up your hand and let us know. There was just one other comment that showed up earlier. And it's a good one. It's just whether or not we're going to have ideas of how to connect to different subject areas. Using this concept approach to learning really makes it easy to connect to the other subject areas, as you probably noticed, perhaps, and that's probably why that question came up. They will start showing up in the documents we create. I think, Chris, we've already found some links that we can do that with, and they show up once in a while. But we don't have a concerted or one specific document that shows how that can happen. But certainly there's lots of talk and thought about that because it's very efficient to do it that way for sure.
Sherry, any other questions?
Sorry, I don't think you actually answered the question about like how many weeks or like, we're trying to do our like year plan, like roughly like how long do you spend on living systems?
I think with the really heavy ones, you're probably looking at sort of 2 months at a time. If you're going to embed things, like if you're going to embed the computing science and scientific method, which we hope you do, I would kind of look at that as 2 months. You might even need a little bit more for Earth systems. And I'm also going to qualify that by saying it depends on how much science time you have, because that really varies in school to school too. But that being said, Earth systems and living systems are big ones. They really interconnect a lot. And so you can draw from one to the other, but Earth systems just has so much information in it that you just don't want to rush through and just make it a fill in the blank. So I would take 2 months for living systems, because it also gives me, if I'm going to start with that one, it gives me a chance to really get to know the kids, gives me a chance to introduce some of that stuff that I might not have to do all year as I go through. Earth systems, I would say probably you're going to need 2.5 months, 3 months to cover that succinctly. So space won't take you very long at all. So if you took a month, that would be good. If you had 3 weeks before Christmas holidays, that would be good. But Christmas, their brains are already somewhere else. So, but that's just kind of thinking from that perspective. Matter, I would say about the same. Ted, would you not say about 2 on that one? I would say the same thing with that one.
What did you say? How many for matter?
About 2 months for matter. So you've got 5 to cover, but they're not really 10 months divided by 5, because space won't take you a month. and give and take some times that you lose in between. So if you kind of say, I'm going to set aside 3 months for Earth systems and around 2 months for the other ones, 1 for space, kind of navigate through there, you will find, especially after you've taught it once, that there would be places that you would overlap them. Or, for example, if I'm thinking about some of the things that we do in living systems, some of the things that we do in Earth systems, I would tie that into stats in grades 4, 5, 6, because they fit together there as well. So there will be some logical places that you could put those into and have them. We created a unit for study in science in living systems. Actually, it's not in there yet, but it will be. It's an investigation, but I would pull that and put it with my stats at the same time. You don't have to do stats as a separate unit standing alone in math either. I can do my statistical discussions and learning as I unpack my investigation and collect my data in science. So melding the two together is a great way of doing that.
What about energy?
I don't know
That
that
one's a
that
little
was,
bit less, I think.
Like 3 weeks to a month, or
yep, that's about right.
so energy and space are your smallest units?
Oh, no, sorry, 3 weeks to a month? No, I wouldn't say that. Maybe a month, month and a half.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
2 learning outcomes in energy.
Yeah.
It's the only organizing idea that has 2 learner outcomes. But they're
And
fairly straightforward.
And that varies for the grades. Not every grade has 2.
Okay, I teach grade 6, so I probably need the 2.
Yeah, grades 4 to 6 have the 2.
Okay, that's a good start. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else that we?
Maybe just point out this, that any future PD sessions will be posted on the ARPDC site. Our name is changing on September 1st, though, to the Alberta Professional Learning Consortium, or the APLC. That's why you see that new logo, the consortium up there. So I believe, I'm not sure if the website name will change at that time or not, but to find future PD sessions, just go to the ARPD website. And there are definitely connections to the 4-5 social studies as well. Thanks, Rhonda.
Absolutely.